Miss Kim Hardy Erskine was a member of the St. George's class of 1980. Her family has a deep history of connection to our school. Her grandfather, great-uncle, 4 cousins, and 2 sisters are all SG alum. Miss Erskine graduated from Denison, where she majored in art history with a minor in math. She has spent most of her professional career in fundraising, most recently as the Director of Planned Giving at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. She has 2 boys. Jimmy, 28, lives in Boston, and Drew, 25, lives in Atlanta. Miss Erskine loves to play tennis, golf, ski, sail, and Zumba. She has recently taken up swing dancing and has joined a choir called Rock Voices that sings rock songs from the 60s to today. She loves to travel and has been to 46 states, as well as 14 different countries. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Erskine.
Wow. Thank you for that introduction and inviting me to speak today. I also want to thank you all for choosing to come to chapel. I know you might not think of it as a choice, but I know from personal experience that it is. In fact, a friend of mine once told me of a story where they decided not to go to chapel, and while everyone was in chapel, they went into the faculty lounge and took the van keys out of the mailbox that had the word van keys on it, took a van, went to Newport, got some awful awfuls, came back, and no one was ever the wiser. Well, now you are, but anyways, thank you for coming today. When Alix and Jackie asked me to give this talk, my first reaction was no. I have nothing to say that anyone would want to listen to. And besides, I get very nervous speaking in public. Then I realized that by saying yes, I could choose to take this task head on and face my fears, something I've been doing recently. So my topic for today is this. You have choices in life, some big, some small. But I urge you, no matter what the size, make them thoughtfully and make them for yourself. One of the first decisions I remember making in my life was choosing to come to St. George's. We were living in Minnesota, and I knew I'd be coming back east to boarding school. I had 2 options. One was St. Timothy's School, a girls' school outside of Baltimore, Maryland. My mother and all her sisters and cousins had gone there. My other option was St. George's. I had several family members who had graduated from St. George's, including my grandfather, who had spent some time on the board. I also had many connections to the school from my summers in Northeast Harbor, Maine. Other important factors in my decision included that it was in New England, it was on the ocean, and there were boys. At the time, it seemed like a no-brainer, so I chose St. George's. St. George's was a very different place then. There were 200 boys and 100 girls. When I started in the fall of 1977, even though it had been almost a decade since girls started at St. George's, it was still transitioning into a co-ed school, though at the time I was really oblivious to this. It was only later when I worked at a school that went co-ed in the 90s that I realized St. George's had not been a truly co-ed school when I was there. We were girls at a boys' school. Some prime examples of this were the rooms that were shoehorned into existing spaces. My 4th form year, I lived in the basement of Astor with 18 other girls, with a faculty advisor who really drew the short straw that year. To say it was dank and dark would be heaping too much praise on it. In fact, we kept a spray bottle of Clorox nearby to keep the mold at bay. But it was in athletics that we saw the most glaring signs of disparity between the boys and us. To begin with, there were no girls' locker rooms. While this was nice because it meant we could change in the privacy of our own rooms, it also meant that visiting girls' teams had to change in the basement of 20 House. However, the disparity that had the most long-lasting negative ramifications was that there was only one training room located in the middle of the boys' locker room and only one trainer, Mr. Gibbs. If you were hurt or needed to see the trainer, you had to walk through the boys' locker room. And there probably are not many things more nerve-wracking for a teenage girl than having to brave the smelly, sweaty, locker room surrounded by hormone-raging teenage boys. However, if you needed these services, that's what you had to do, as he was the only game in town. Because of his status, he also had unfettered and unsupervised access to those of us who needed his help to heal. He totally took advantage of that, and with his doctor-like white coat on, spent many years inappropriately touching, assaulting, and even raping girls, just like me, just like you, who braved the locker room to get help for an injury. When the stories of what happened to so many girls at the hands of this person were recently brought to light, I had to reevaluate the choices I had made at St. George's. I needed to make sense of why, at the time, I'd kept quiet about what was happening to me. I came to the startling realization that many of the most important choices in my life were made because of my desire to fit in, to be liked, to be special. Mr. Gibbs was a small, charismatic, elf-like character who created an inner circle from the top female athletes. They had what appeared to be a close, flirtatious relationship with him, and everyone wanted to be in that circle. My need to feel special overrode the feelings of shame and embarrassment of what was happening to me. From the fall of my fourth form year through the fall of my senior year, I kept choosing to go along with, put up with, his inappropriate criminal behavior because it kept me in that inner circle. Being in this circle made me feel special, made me feel nurtured, made me feel like I belonged somewhere. The addition of girls to St. George's also brought a different emotional, social dynamic to the equation of a boarding school. The school was ill-equipped to handle this and seemingly chose to ignore this piece of the pie. My search for this missing piece drove many of my choices. Except for the trainer, I didn't feel there was anyone at St. George's who truly cared about me. As most children do, all I wanted was this reassurance, this love. But I couldn't find anyone that was proud of what I was doing or was there rooting for me. I was so far away from my family, who had always provided a wonderful, nurturing environment. My only connection to them now was through weekly phone calls at a payphone. Do you know what that is? At the bottom of the stairs in Astor. Going home over Christmas, spring, and summer vacation, and my parents' visit once a year for a weekend. Mr. Gibbs knew what I was feeling and how vulnerable I was, and preyed on it. As a typical teenager, I wanted to fit in with my classmates as well as leave my mark at the school. I had made choices based on that desire. Some of my choices were not so smart, including smoking cigarettes to be with the cool kids, skipping chapel, and participating in pranks, among other things teenagers do. Other choices have turned out to have had a good lasting impact on my life, including being a member of the choir. I have recently returned to singing in a choir, though instead of church music, we sing rock music. Because of this desire to leave a mark, I chose to become a class agent after I graduated. I hoped the school would see how loyal I was and that they would care back. Funnily enough, this was the only time I felt any gender bias at St. George's. Being a class agent and later a decade chair kept me connected to the school. I was at the center of the relationship between my classmates and the school. I received lots of praise and recognition from my classmates and from the school for this work. I finally decided to step down after about 15 years, and I remember getting a call from one of the lead volunteers asking me if I would be attending the weekend in the fall, the training weekend. I told him no, that I was finishing up my time at the end of June. He praised my work and thanked me for my dedication. He then asked me if I had any nominations for the Philip Murray Reynolds Award. This is the highest award given each year to the annual Giving St. George's Fund Volunteer of the Year. I paused, and then I said, You mean besides me? There was a moment of silence, and then he started to laugh and said, "No, really, can you suggest anyone?" After I didn't answer, he went on to say, "Oh, you were serious." I was stunned, and yet, being the polite person I was raised to be, I said yes, I had been serious, thanked him for the call, hung up, and burst into tears. It was at that point when I realized that doing all that work didn't make me belong, any more than keeping quiet had. Salt was further thrown on this wound when the award was given to a man, an alum, who worked in the fundraising office at St. George's. It was his job to raise money for the school. For the first time ever, I wondered if the fact that I was a girl played into their decision. I also realized how much I had wanted to win that award, to be recognized for the 15 years of dedicated work, to show my grandfather that, even as a girl, I too could make a difference at the school. I wanted to be the first female alum to win it. It actually took until the year 2000 for the first female alum to win that award, almost 30 years since the school had gone co-ed. The experience left me angry and bitter instead of fulfilled and satisfied, because I chose to do it for someone else, the school, my grandfather, the praises, but not for me. As I said before, I now see that I made many important choices from a deep-seated desire to belong, to be liked, to feel special. In my late 20s, I chose to get married because I had met a very nice man. My friends, my family liked him well enough. He was smart and funny. Many of my friends were getting married, and I wanted to start a family. It was time. I chose not to listen to that niggly voice which questioned that decision. I now had someone in my life who had to like me, who had to love me. I have 2 amazing sons, and life was okay. We had issues, but everybody does. It wasn't until I started talking about what had happened at St. George's and working with a wonderful therapy team that I saw what sacrifices I had made because of the choices I had made. I realized that I needed to start choosing what I wanted rather than choosing to fit in and go with the flow. I needed to choose me. That realization changed my life. In order to accomplish this, I chose to speak out as well as to blow up my perfectly acceptable life. And I'm so glad I did. After 29 years of marriage, I got divorced and started my life over again, the way I chose to. I chose to live for me. I chose to move to Boston because I have family there. My ancestors are from there. I know a lot of people from there from all parts of my life and have reconnected to them. Also, it is in New England, it is near the ocean, and there are great boys. Funny how things come full circle. The choice to blow up my life could have left me bitter and angry, but it has not. I am hopeful and happy and at peace because I chose me. I also can make these choices now because I know I have many people in my life who care about me and think I'm special. I belong. I'm glad I decided to take Alix and Jackie up on their offer to speak to you today. I've met this challenge head on. I did it to prove to myself I could, and I have. If I can leave you with one message, it is this. Remember, you always have choices. Some are big, some are small. But don't make any choice because you think you have to, or to please someone, or if it just doesn't feel right, or doesn't bring you joy. Make the choice that is best for you. I have learned that the way to feel special, loved, included is by choosing me. And I thank you for choosing to come to chapel today.